Hi, this is Alexcursus, a show where I sometimes play some Gundam games and see how authentic they are. This time, we are looking at the SD Gundam G Generation Internal, available on Play Store and Apple Store, and it is a Gacha game. It is those microtransaction trash, quote unquote, but it's also very good at being a live service revival versions of the old SLG games or board games, or some people say it is a Final Fantasy or Fire Emblem like clones, although the origin is more of a simplified portable gaming arcade type of war simulation games. This is not the first mobile entry for the SD Gundam G Generation either, and I want to do a video on it after it's coming out in less than a week, because I feel seen. Like this launch version is definitely made for the old fans, the old gangs. And it is a very good way to introduce people who are not familiar with SLG or other SLG fans that is not familiar with the G Generation format. I am not sure how they will continue to work on this game, but at least on the launch version, it is surprisingly good at, I'm repeating myself, but I have to emphasize this. It is surprisingly good at being a regular SLG game. The gacha element only really to serve as, like, they are literally paid to win for all of your salarymen who couldn't spend the time to grind the levels. I will talk about those later when I talk about it in my saga format. Style, action, gimmick, and absence. Now, most of these videos would just be loops of some of the footage I captured on my phone when I was playing, or just some idle images here and there. I do have a few freeze frame for relevant points. Style-wise, this is a SD Gundam, so the Gundams are in their more QC format, and not quite BB warriors. That's why you see no pupils in the mobile suits. They are still being piloted by human pilots. The QC format is really a callback to the older systems. Like, you can't really have a detailed mobile suit drawing, so they condense it into this QC format. Sort of Gundam's version of heroic scale. So right off the bat, that is your Gundam. They are in slightly more QC format, but the pilots are still their regular normal proportion animation drawing. They are not BB Warrior 5 being a bit more meta. They're less meta, but the game is very. There are points of this game that gets very meta, but at least when you just put it up, when it just started, the meta is kind of at the back. The UI is also fairly G Generation, especially the portable ones, the ones from WonderSwan, the DS, PSP, etc. This aesthetic is carried over from there, which again, as a mobile app, it's very good. Now we are back to the traditional G Generation turn-based. You can say that is kind of a beat 'em up. You can definitely play this game by just mashing your most powerful attacks or use the auto function and let the computer take care of it, or your phone take care of it. It managed to preserve the original series gameplay, but we'll save that for action. The sounds, they will be a bit quieter, definitely straight from the original PlayStation G generation soundtracks and effects. There are new ones, but a lot of them are very much legacy, and those definitely hit my nostalgia itch. They definitely make me feel like this is a G generation game. And if you notice, we have Lee Cygnus, relatively obscured, the very first official Gundam title with a girl protagonist. And they are unleashing its full potential as part of the initial gacha, and I managed to got it straight out from redoable draw, which again we will talk about that in action. But for style, having La Cygnus alongside with Ariel is a big statement, I feel like. And yeah, along with its pilot Asuna. So yeah, it's definitely taking care of long-time Gundam fans. And if you are a new Gundam fan, you will get to see the wide array of Gundam designs that we have throughout the years, even after they are being unified in this kind of a SDG generation aesthetics. Style-wise, with the music, with the UI, with the sprites, with the character cards, again, a lot of them are reused from older titles. I'm not against reusing assets, so that the studio can focus more on elements that would affect, your gaming experience. So style-wise, I want to give it an S because of how good some of those songs are. And the G generation compositions to me is always the definitive edition of some of these BGM used in the series, and they create new BGMs for things like the manga, like for La Cygnus. So it's an S for me. I can't really push it down for style. Like we got other categories to to trash on this gacha game. As far as gacha go, I think this is a very good style. So yeah, action. Where most gacha game would fail is gameplay, which is what I define as action here, because it is not really an action game. A lot of the SD Gundam illustrations you saw are just this flat PNG. They don't even move. You will get a few cut-in scenes where they use a blend of 3D models and animated PNG for those cut-in animations. Again, a lot of those are not original, but it does not matter. Like it's fine as long as they're included. You might also see quite a bit of pixelation because I fully intended to play this game with as little data loading as possible. I am playing it on a phone. It's okay if it is not 4K or 8K. If you're watching this video now and see how rough some of this video or image is, it's fine, because you're supposed to look at it on the phone, and having a smooth experience on your phone is more important, I think. So yeah, gameplay wise, like I mentioned, in style, it is still your turn-based SLG. I mean, you do have all the system from all the G generation titles beforehand. One of the best example is the SP skills, which comes and goes in the home console G Generation series, but it's definitely a staple for the portable versions, like again WonderSwan, DS, PSP. Well, PSP is different. PSP is pretty much a remake of the old PlayStation G Generation, but they add a system that is similar to the SP skills as passive skills. So you got both the active skills and the passive skills. And instead of having all of the support attack and support defense on everybody, these skills are now separated to different pilots. In fact, the same character, for example, like Amuro or Camille, I think in most of my gameplay, I use both Camille. I use both the schoolboy Camille and the pilot suit Camille because one of them is a defensive pilot and the other is a support pilot. The support pilots allow me to use support attack, and the defense version allow me to use support defense, which does have their use and does help you through the levels without grinding, at least on normal mode for the most part. So I value them quite a lot. And it's nice to see different versions of the same character have different uses. This is definitely a good allocation. The mobile suits themselves are also divided into attack, support, and defense. Defense have defensive bonuses on top of their regular stats. Support have extra energy and energy regen, and then attack just got extra attack. It's fairly similar to the pilots, and you will get different versions of the same mobile suit. So for example, Zeta Gundam here, you got Zeta Gundam 3B type here as the defensive version, and then you have regular Zeta Gundam as a support. There might be an attack version of Zeta somewhere, but I haven't seen it yet. So again, it is nice to see similar mobile suits with different roles that is authentic to their lore. Another part of the gameplay is development, which this part was done poorly in their previous entry, and I am rightfully worried about it when they announced this game. But they did a really good job here. Now, unfortunately, your Gacha mobile suits cannot be developed. They are what they are. If you got a UR for your favorite mobile suits like La Cygnus, very cool. It is good and you can use it all the time on your free team. But then you got some mobile suit that is less fortunate, like the Inak or Chazaku. They are in lower rarity and they are stuck at that level. All of the resources you sink into them will level them up, but they wouldn't be that good. Having said that, them being playable and possibly have some improved Gacha version. For example, like the Zua, those are welcome additions. I don't mind them not being on the development grid, but I do want, for example, a 08 MS team development grid and campaign later on, but we can talk about those in absence. So far, we got development grid for the mainline forces, and Bandai is not afraid to include some MSV variants in them. Some of them quite rightfully, some of them I feel like is just forcing you to grind or pay to win. But the way they are done, I can't fault them. It's lore accurate for the most part. Definitely not the part where Bo developed into GM and then developed into Prototype Gundam. But it makes sense in a RPG progression-wise type of thing. And yet you can't see it in this screenshot, but it is the Type 61 tank developed into the Core Fighter back to the gun tank. Again, it makes sense as sort of a RPG progression or SLG power level progression, not so much as a law accurate technology. But some of them are law accurate technology, so we got both. So that's pretty cool. And then you got what they call a base, which is the very old school Flash online game type of homepage, where they got a gallery, a MS-DOC, character requests, and then the training mission, which is part of the initial events. It's also here. Okay, I don't mind more access to that. And then a warship cruise, which is basically your passive grinding. Again, a callback to the web flash game days, base building elements. I'm glad you don't really need to be active on this part of the game. You sort of just, comes in, check in once in a while, and you get reward from it. So yeah, gameplay wise, I like it a lot. Keep coming back. The Gacha elements, it's really there for your poor salaryman who couldn't play the game, who couldn't really grind or spend time to figure out how to approach the board with the level. For those who do have time, they do allow free energy retry. So, even if you do fail the mission, you can try again. I think it also costs you no energy to give up. I never tried that because the game had been treating me fairly well so far. You might not be happy that you are not doing an 8-hour grinding session in the intermediate levels. But in the initial levels, you are leveling up so fast, you probably got more energy than you would for the missions. And once you reach a certain levels, you probably have too much energy that you are start using the skipping function for the grind, which is again a nice addition that allow people to have a little bit of the ring rod gacha grind, but also enjoy the game, when they want to enjoy the game, which is cool. I don't really have a good answer as to which style of gameplay is peak G generation. I certainly miss the old days where where you destroy one enemy, you can basically just keep doing that chain combo and destroy all enemy forces as long as your weapon can reach or your mobile suit move fast enough and you have enough energy to spend. I definitely miss doing that, but at the same time, there is no strategy or no tactics in that. So having a limited bonus step is cool, having limited support attack and support defense is also cool. I definitely have been thinking a lot at how to going through the levels. Then I had been doing for the last quite a few entries. I think I really only have to think about how I approach levels when in the very first few titles, where I'm not grinding, I just playing the game straight, going levels to levels. And then because they don't expect you to be able to get past difficult levels without any sort of grinding, they kind of expect you to grind a little bit after a few levels. So some later levels, like especially for the 0079 campaign, they expect you to be invested into ground type mobile suits a lot by Jabro, that you have to grind a bit before you start the Solomon campaign. But for this one, maybe because I got a pretty good pool, so I don't have to do that. But I definitely use quite a bit of skips because I level up quite fast, and that earned me Gundam or second Gundam quite fast. So yeah, action wise, I would give it an A. It's definitely a solid G generation entry. I had been recommending people to play it. Next is gimmick. Gimmick, I guess, for a game is how does this game stand out from similar games? Like I have said before, as a gacha microtransaction live service zombie, the regular gameplay is pretty good. I also like how they included the resource grinding levels. If you don't know, G Generation does offer you resource grinding levels after you beat the game once or with certain data disk, DLC, etc. Kaliware understand, again, not everybody have the time to grind all the levels, so they do have some workaround on gameplays if their level design kind of fail you, and the additional resources definitely help you to level up your favorite mobile suits that is not, the protagonist Gundam or the rival's mobile suit or mobile armor. If you really want to use that inact or that, space type terrain to beat the level, here you go. Use the free daily grinds, use the free skips, and level those guys up. Another gimmick is, like we said, the development grid. There are usually some sort of evolved combination systems on most gacha that you can do, but I think it is rare for a gacha game to offer them in the main campaign that you can always place. And even more rare that you can literally get a full team of SSRs to play through the hard levels. I would also want to give a shout out to their recommended CP, which is pretty much your power level for your team. They have been very accurate. I have gone through levels with a bit of a hiccup with below recommended CP, but I can still get through it. And if you are on the recommended CP or above, you would have a much easier time. Like a lot of gacha games just have inflated power levels for your teams, and your hard-earned event or main campaign characters rarely perform as well as their gacha counterparts. For G Generation internal, yes, the gacha counterparts are more powerful, but they're harder to get, and it is also harder for you to progress. So there's a balance. Again, the gacha element is serving as a pay-to-win for your poor salaryman who cannot sink time into the gameplay. For people who can, the game's design is definitely good enough for you to play through its levels with a bit of grinding. And at least so far, you will have enough energy to do that as long as you're playing the game manually. And I really like how as you progress through the development diagram, you also earn rewards. And by completing the harder of the development diagram of the two between, the more protagonist heavy side and the more villain heavy side, one of them would be easier, one of them would be harder. Sometimes they're both just as hard. Either way, completing the harder one will also earn you a ultimate development mobile suit, which is actually standing toe-to-toe to the gacha counterpart. Again, looking out for people who sink time into the gameplay. Like, this game is actually free to pay for the most part, which I think is the biggest gimmick, on launch. Again, this is the launch version that I want to encapsulate my opinion on. On the launch version, it's definitely a free-to-play game, and you can enjoy all the content all the same without sinking any money in, and you get to redo your initial gacha as many times as possible until you're satisfied. I pull out quite a few obscure mobile suits, and I'm sticking with it, and it definitely helped me start running. So I think they are doing the Gacha gimmick very well here. Like they are actually providing a free-to-play G-generation experience with optional microtransaction. I have to give it an S here, at least for the launch version. I don't know if future campaigns or future rebalancing will mess up everything, but at least initially it is pretty good. Last and pretty much least for the most part is absence. For those or if we look at the main campaign timeline for a bit, we are only going up to the double setters campaign for now for the Universal Century. And you will notice there isn't a lot, rather, there is no Universal Century side stories. Like I have mentioned, 08 MS Team have always been a good side story for people to grind a little bit before they tackle Mobile Suit Gundam's Siege of Solomon. We don't have that yet. I hope we will get that later, and I hope we got development diagram for that. It would be nice to see what type of EZHs we get for the developmental version, the level up version, the grind version of EZH. What does that do, as opposed to the Gacha version that we are getting for now? And most of the AU are unlocked after you complete the double setter campaign, which kind of pushes you to the to over level 50 and beyond. Not a bad idea. Again, most of the AU I haven't unlocked them yet, but as far as I can tell, at least for the newer ones, the 2000 ones, they are all season ones. GW and X should be the full story by looking at the tech tree or the development tree, which could be proven quite powerful in other campaigns. And then another obvious elephant in the room is how what they call modification in this game, basically optional parts in other game where you can put additional functionalities that's not supposed to be on the particular mobile suit on it. One of the most popular ones would be exam system, zero systems, etc., etc. They are not offered initially, and at the moment you only get very limited selection of them. But one modification that really is missing is the SFS, the subflight systems. They sort of went in and out of fashion in G generations. In the older console games, the subflight system really makes some of the very slow mobile suit into powerhouse. Like, for example, the GM Sniper, it have a very long-range weapon, but it's moving very slow and it can't fly. The subflight system basically make it as good as Zeta Gundam, if not better, because Gundam snipers, like the sniper rifle, use less energy than the hyper beam launcher of Zeta Gundam, and the damage they dealt is very comparable. I get why and most subflight system is accessible in those older G generation games. So in those older G generation games, you can have some very high level, like archaic mobile suits. Like the GM Sniper, you can literally use it throughout the whole Universal Century and beyond, which kind of defeat the collectathon aspect of the game. You can't get that here, and so far I don't see a subflight system modification. So in one of the campaigns where I'm showing you now, I straight up cannot use Lacinus because for the game's categorization, it is not capable of atmospheric flight, even though the whole sickness gimmick is atmospheric flight without MAMO, but let's kind of ignore that. For gameplay, I understand they want to push they want to give some value to atmospheric flights. Like they want to give some value to mobile suit with atmospheric flight capabilities. Because traditionally it's really gimmicky if a mobile suit can fly or not. In some water levels, because most mobile suits have a terrible movement speed underwater. It would be great if you have mobile suits with atmospheric flight capabilities because, flying is much faster than awkwardly swimming with your nuclear thermal thrusters or literally with the mobile suit limbs. I get it, giving a bit of spotlight for those mobile suits. But at the same time, some of the most popular or powerful mobile suits does come with, atmospheric abilities. But I guess most of those would be Gacha only, at least, on early stages like Zeta. So I guess it's okay, but yeah, definitely do not like if the enemy can have some flight system for their regular Hyzak and Hyzak custom while you are limited to what type of mobile suit you can choose. But hey, I get to use the Javelin and it's pretty fun to have the Javelin once in a while. So yeah, I guess for absence, I would give it an A. I am still skeptical about how the game will run. As I'm recording this video, there are people who beaten all of the main campaigns, the harder levels as well. And I personally just started the Double Zeta campaign. But I think if they are being reasonable and they look at the metadata as to how most people will just play this game casually, I think it will be fine. Sure, some of the hardcore players would grind out the content pretty quickly, but you would be pushing away 90% of the player base if the games are tailored too much towards the hardcore gamers. I don't know how will future campaign goes. Hopefully they wouldn't lock too much stuff behind paywalls. Yeah, just hopefully a lot of the microtransactions or paywalls are just for, extra flavors and not enjoyment of the game or letting people know about the mobile suit variants. So to recap, G Generation Internal definitely captures the traditional G Generation style very well. The action, which I think is gameplay in this case, with a bit more emphasizing on playing the game instead of grinding the game, although grinding is definitely still part of the game. So, you can do both. Like both paths will, get you through the game. If anything, from those people who've beaten the hard Double Zeta levels, you do need to play the game as well as a bit of grinding. And for gimmick, you can get a rough idea of the major Gundam stories with their slideshows in-game. There are some in-game animation done for a few of the iconic moments, but for the most part, they are just dialogues and screenshots of the animated shows. Still, it is a very good representation of Gundam as realistic fictional technology developments. Admittedly, in the style of SD Gundam. As for absence, this is not the entire catalog that Gundam can offer. This is not everything in the G Generation arsenal. They haven't provided the more meta levels that some old fans will know, which I don't know. I am excited to see them being recreated in this Gacha microtransaction live service thing app. So the verdict for the SD G Generation Internal, mobile game is S for style, A for action, S for gimmick, and A for absence. Overall, I think this is actually the best entry Gundam game that I would recommend to people. This is definitely not the best Gundam game, and it's probably not the best G generation game. But given how easy it is to get into, and the tutorial campaign definitely teaches you how to play the game, even with a bit of advanced. They plan some advanced gameplay idea in your head in there as well. So, and it's free to play. Maybe download this game on a account that you don't have a credit card or payment method attached to it. So you limit yourself not to pay to win, and you will get more game out of it. And hopefully we have some generous salarymen who do shell a lot of bucks to keep the game alive. Thanks for watching. See you next time.